There is something deeply and primitively unsettling about a swimming pool at night. During the day, it's a place of joy. But when the sun goes down, everything changes. The water becomes a dark, glassy mirror, reflecting only the black sky. You can't tell what might be lurking just beneath the surface. The pool is no longer just a place for fun. It's a deep, dark hole filled with water. It was a hot summer day in 1993. Among the swimmers was a little girl named Nabila. In the deep end, there was a large suction grate for the pool's powerful filtration system, but the cover was missing. As Nabila swam near the bottom, she felt a sudden, immense force. The suction pulled her in, holding her tight against the grate. She couldn't move. She couldn't scream. Above the surface, the fun continued. No one noticed she was gone. It took several grown men to pull her free from the pipe's relentless grip, but it was too late. The cheerful pool had become a scene of unimaginable horror. In 2014, a man named John was house-sitting for a wealthy family in their sprawling suburban home. One evening, John decided to go for a late-night swim. As he approached the pool, he noticed something odd. A dark shape was moving slowly across the bottom of the deep end. The shape was long and slender, and it moved with a strange, fluid grace. He walked to the edge of the deep end, his heart starting to beat a little faster. A shiver went down his spine. The next morning, he called the pool maintenance company. "Oh, you must have seen the alligator," the man said casually. It turned out that a small alligator had found its way into the pool from a nearby creek. In the sweltering summer of 1988, the family pool was supposed to be a sanctuary. But for teenage brothers Mark and Eric, it had become a chore. Their father had tasked them with its upkeep, a job they resented, especially today. Because for the past week, a strange new sound had joined the familiar hum of the pump. It was a low, intermittent murmur, a rhythmic disruption to the summer's quiet, and it was getting on their nerves. They'd tried to ignore it, hoping it would fix itself, but the sound was only growing more insistent, more articulate. Finally, Mark, the older brother, decided to investigate. He walked toward the rickety pump shed, the source of the noise. As he got closer, the sound changed. It wasn't just a mechanical rattle. There was a wet, gurgling quality to it. He pulled open the heavy, splintered door, releasing a wave of humid air thick with the smell of chlorine and damp earth. Inside, the noise was overwhelming. It was a constant, rhythmic gurgle, a liquid pulse that sounded disturbingly like a voice trying to speak through a throat full of water. It was a sound that didn't belong to any machine he had ever heard. Eric, who had followed him in, whispered, "We should just get Dad." But Mark, feeling a surge of older brother bravado, shook his head. "It's just a clog. We can fix it." Their focus turned to the large metal filter canister, the heart of the system. They knew they had to open it. The clamps were rusted tight, fighting them every inch of the way. They put all their weight into it, grunting with effort, their knuckles scraping against the metal. With a final, agonizing twist, the seal broke with a wet, sucking sound and the heavy lid came loose. The stench that erupted from the canister was immediate and vile, a putrid mix of decay and chemicals that made them gag. The filter was packed solid with a thick, gelatinous mass of long, dark hair and what looked like the shredded remnants of a child's swimsuit. As their eyes adjusted in the dim light, they saw something pale gleaming within the disgusting slurry. Mark reached in tentatively with a screwdriver, pushing aside a clump of hair. There, tangled in the fibrous, slimy mess, was a human jawbone. It was impossibly small, with a full set of tiny teeth, clearly that of a young child. In that moment of cold, paralyzing dread, the sound from the pump stopped. The silence was somehow worse. They understood. The murmuring sound had not been the pump at all. It had been the water, the pool's lifeblood being forced day after day through the hollows and sockets of that tiny bone. It had turned a piece of a lost child into a macabre instrument, creating a sound that mimicked a human whisper, a desperate, gurgling plea from a watery grave. The pool was never a sanctuary again. It was a tomb, and on quiet nights the brothers could still hear the echo of that murmur in their minds. The air in Fall River, Massachusetts was thick and heavy, a typical July evening in 1979. The public swimming pool, a concrete oasis that had shimmered with life all day, was finally quieting down. The last echoes of joyful screams and splashes faded into the twilight, replaced by the gentle lapping of water against tile. For the lifeguards, it was the end of another long, sweltering shift. The scent of chlorine and sunblock still hung in the humid air, a familiar perfume of summer that was about to be corrupted. Jane, one of the senior lifeguards, began her final sweep of the perimeter. Her muscles ached, her mind already on the drive home. It was a mindless, repetitive task she'd done 1,000 times. But as she approached the deep end, her routine was shattered. She stopped, squinting into the turquoise water, now shadowed by the setting sun. Near the main drain, a strange discoloration was blooming. She initially dismissed it as algae or rust from the grate, but it wasn't green or brown. She knelt at the pool's edge. The cloud was a deep, sickening red, not the bright crimson of a fresh cut, but a murky, almost blackish maroon. It didn't dissipate or spread thin like dye from a prank. It seemed to pulse, slowly coiling out from the drain's grate like a foul, underwater smoke signal. It swirled with a thick, viscous quality that made her stomach clench. A faint coppery odor, metallic and wrong, reached her, cutting through the chlorine. It was the smell of old blood. Her heart hammered as she found her supervisor, her voice trembling as she explained what she saw. He was skeptical at first, but one look into the deep end wiped the annoyance from his face, replaced by a pale mask of dread. An urgent, hushed call was made, and the decision was final. Drain the pool. The deafening roar of the pumps kicked in, beginning the agonizing process of emptying hundreds of thousands of gallons. The staff watched in silence as the water level began its slow descent, revealing the tiled walls inch by inch. As the water receded from the deep end, a shape began to emerge, tangled in the powerful suction of the main drain. First, an unrecognizable mass. Then, the unmistakable, horrifying outline of a human form. Lodged in the pipe was the decomposing body of a woman, later identified as a local resident reported missing 3 weeks prior. For all those weeks, as families laughed and children played, they had been swimming in a watery grave. The serene blue pool had been hiding a dark, silent, and gruesome secret all along. Our final story takes us to the humid, manicured tranquility of a gated community in Central Florida. For the Miller family, this was it, the culmination of a dream. They'd left the noise of the city behind for a new house, a sprawling single-story home that promised peace and security. The crown jewel was the backyard pool, its crystalline water shimmering under a fine mesh screen, a private oasis shielded from the insects and the outside world. It was a symbol of their new beginning, a place where they imagined countless sunny afternoons with their children, the air filled with laughter and the scent of chlorine and blooming hibiscus. But the suburbs have their own secrets, buried just beneath the surface of their perfect lawns. A few weeks after moving in, Sarah Miller was jolted from a deep sleep. The digital clock on her nightstand glowed. 3:17 a.m. The house was silent, her husband breathing softly beside her. But then she heard it again, a sound from the backyard, so faint she almost dismissed it as a dream. It wasn't the wind or the hum of the pool filter. It was a gentle, rhythmic disturbance of water, a soft, steady splashing, lap after lap after lap. It was too methodical for an animal, too quiet for a teenager's prank. Her heart began to pound against her ribs. She slipped out of bed, her feet cold on the hardwood floor, and crept to the sliding glass door that led to the lanai. Peering through the blinds, her breath caught in her throat. The pool lights were off, but the moon cast a ghostly glow on the water's surface. And in the water, a figure was moving, a man. He was swimming slow, deliberate laps, his form cutting through the water with an unnatural grace. He was gaunt, his skin eerily pale in the moonlight. His movements were so fluid, so silent, that he barely seemed to displace the water at all. He never came up for air, never made a sound. He just swam, his face a blank mask of concentration, lost in his own world. Shaking, Sarah backed away from the door, fumbling for her phone to dial 911, her voice a choked whisper. She watched from the safety of her bedroom window as she waited for the police, her eyes locked on the spectral swimmer. He never faltered in his rhythm, never looked towards the house. It was as if she and her entire family didn't exist. When the distant wail of sirens finally grew closer, the man's routine was broken. He didn't panic or try to flee. He simply stopped mid-lap, treading water for a moment before calmly swimming to the side. He pulled his thin frame out of the pool with a quiet weariness and sat on the edge, dripping onto the concrete, waiting patiently as the officers approached. The explanation, when it came, was more heartbreaking than horrifying. The man's name was Arthur. He and his wife, Eleanor, had built this house 30 years ago. The pool was his anniversary gift to her after she fell ill, a place where the water could support her frail body and give her a sense of freedom. They swam together every single night, under the stars. A year ago, Eleanor had passed away in the house. Drowning in medical debt and his own profound grief, Arthur lost the house to the bank. But in his mind, clouded by sorrow and dementia, he wasn't trespassing. He was simply coming home. He was returning to the only place in the world where he could still feel close to his wife, swimming laps in the dark, forever chasing her memory in the silent moonlit water. So the next time you stand at the edge of a pool, especially at night, take a moment. Look into that dark, quiet water. The still water of a pool is like a mirror. It reflects our world, but it also hides a world of its own just beneath the surface. Because sometimes the scariest things aren't the monsters that hide in the shadows. They're the ones that have been right in front of you the entire time, waiting patiently in the still blue water.